The path climbs through the cedars, and the light is failing. A monk walks it alone, counting his steps against the dark. Then the wind stops. High above him, something laughs. Not an animal, not a man. He looks up and sees only branches, black against a bruised sky. A stone falls beside his foot. Then another, thrown from nowhere, striking the path like slow rain. The forest is empty in every direction, but the mountain has an owner. And the owner has noticed him. The people of Japan gave that owner a name. They called it the Tengu. This is Myths from the Shadows, where every culture hides a secret waiting to be told. Subscribe and join the Myth Keepers, because some stories must never be forgotten. The story does not begin in the mountains. It begins in the sky above the capital, more than 13 centuries ago. The year is 637. The court of Emperor Jomi rules from the Yamato plain. The later chroniclers of the Nihon Shoki would write it down. One day, a great star tears across the heavens from east to west. It burns as it goes, and behind it rolls a sound like thunder. The people below stop in the fields and the streets. Some cry out that it is a shooting star. Others whisper that it is the earth itself, growling. But at the court there is a monk named Min who has studied in China. He listens to the fear spreading through the capital, and he corrects it. That was no shooting star, he says. That was the celestial dog. Its bark is the voice of thunder. The celestial dog, in China it was called the Tengu, a heavenly dog and an omen of disaster. In Japanese, the same characters are read another way, Tengu. That is the first time the word is ever written down in Japan. A fireball, a frightened city, and a monk naming the thing in the sky. And then, strangely, silence. The chronicles move on. For nearly 2 centuries, the Tengu vanishes from the records, as if the name had fallen out of the sky and been lost in the mountains. It had not been lost, it had been changing. When the Tengu returns, it is no longer a dog, and it no longer lives in the sky. It has become a creature of the peaks and the deep forests. It has wings now, and a beak, and the cruel eyes of a black kite. The Heian court knows exactly what it is. The Tengu is the sworn enemy of the Buddhist law. Picture a monastery in the hills above Kyoto. A young monk sits in meditation as the lamps burn low. Something lands on the roof, softly, the way a bird lands. Then the tiles begin to shift. By morning the monk is gone. And they find him days later, bound to the top of a tall tree, babbling of flight. This is what Tengu do in the old tales. They hunt the holy. The Kanjaku Monogatari, a great collection of tales written around the year 1120, is full of them, and the Tengu it describes are not brutes. They are deceivers. In one story, a Buddha appears in a persimmon tree beside a busy road in the capital. It hovers among the branches, radiant, raining down flowers and golden light. Word spreads within hours. Crowds choke the road, ox carriages jammed wheel to wheel, nobles and beggars weeping side by side at the miracle. For 7 days the Buddha shines in the tree, and the whole city believes. Then the minister of the right arrives. He is a hard man. And something about this miracle smells wrong to him. A true Buddha, he reasons, does not simply appear in a roadside tree for an audience. So he steps down from his carriage, folds his hands, and stares at the shining figure. He does not pray, he does not blink, he simply stares. For 2 hours the Buddha radiates light and the minister stares, and slowly the glow begins to gutter, like a lamp running out of oil. The flowers stop falling, the light flickers, shrinks, and dies, and out of the branches drops a broken kestrel with a shattered wing, flopping in the dust of the road. The crowd that came to worship watches boys beat it to death. A Tengu exposed by nothing more than one man's refusal to believe. Another tale begins at a pond, where a small dragon has taken the form of a snake to warm itself in the sun. A shadow crosses the water. Talons close, and the dragon is ripped into the sky. The Tengu carries it far into the mountains and drops it into a cave barely wider than its body. The trap is perfect. A dragon's power lives in water, and the cave is dry as bone. The dragon cannot move, it cannot fly. It can only wait in the dark to die, but the Tengu is greedy, and greed is always the door. Some days later it snatches a new victim. A monk climbing back to his monastery on Mount Hai, a water flask in his hand, the Tengu hurls the monk into the same cave and wedges the entrance shut. And there in the blackness, the monk hears something enormous breathe. The dragon speaks first. It asks the trembling man if he carries any water at all. The monk feels for his flask. One swallow remains, no more. He pours that single drop into the darkness. The cave explodes. One drop is enough. The dragon takes its true form, splits the mountain open in a roar of thunder and rain, and rises into the storm with the monk on its back. It carries him gently home through the lightning. Then it turns, goes hunting, and the Tengu does not survive the reunion. But the Tengu's favorite battlefield was never the sky. It was the human heart. The tales tell of Tengu slipping into the bodies of beautiful women and walking them into monasteries to sit near famous monks and smile. They tell of holy men snatched in the middle of prayer, carried over the rooftops, and dropped in distant provinces as a joke. Every trick has the same target: pride, faith, discipline. Whatever a monk has built, the Tengu wants to break, and sometimes the Tengu's pride broke first. In the 14th century, an illustrated scroll recorded the most humiliating Tengu story of all. A great Tengu of China, named Zagebo, hears of the monks of Mount Hiei and decides to teach Japan a lesson. He crosses the sea on his black wings, boasting the whole way. He will trip these famous monks into sin. He will make a mockery of the holy mountain. The mountain disagrees. Zagebo ambushes his first monk and is thrown down by the invisible guardians who walk beside the man. He tries again and is caught, beaten, and trampled until his wings hang in rags. The protector deities of Hiei break him the way a storm breaks a kite. The local Tengu of Japan find him afterward, groaning in a heap and in the scroll's most famous scene. They carry the great demon of China to a hot spring and nurse him in the bath, wings drooping over the water, while he complains bitterly about Japanese monks. When he can fly again, Zagebo limps home across the sea, thoroughly cured of his ambition. Even in their own stories, the Tengu could lose. But the next chapter is not funny at all, because the court was about to learn where Tengu come from. They come from us. By the medieval age, monks whispered of a hidden road in the afterlife, not heaven, not hell. Something in between, reserved for a special kind of soul. They called it the way of the Tengu. It was said to wait for monks whose learning was real but whose hearts were rotten. The scholar who mastered every sutra and used them for fame, the abbot who preached humility and hoarded gold. Such men were too holy for hell. Their prayers had been genuine, their discipline was real, and it counted, but pride had poisoned all of it, so they could not enter paradise either. They died, and they woke on a mountainside with wings and talons and centuries of arrogance to burn away. Every Tengu in the forest, the tales now said, had once been a man of the temple. And if a corrupt monk could become a Tengu, what would a betrayed emperor become? His name was Sutoku, and he had been emperor of Japan. Forced from the throne young, pushed aside in favor of rivals, he finally gambled everything on rebellion. In the year 1156, in the streets of Kyoto, the Shogun rebellion rose and failed in a single night of fire. Sutoku lost everything. The victors put him on a boat and exiled a former son of heaven to Sanuki, a windswept province across the sea to be forgotten. He did not rage, not at first. Instead, he turned to devotion. For 3 years, the fallen emperor copied the Holy Sutras, and tradition says he copied them in his own blood. 5 scrolls, written stroke by stroke from his open veins, as an offering of peace. He sent them to the capital, asking only that they be placed in a temple near his ancestors. It was a plea for reconciliation, written in everything he had left. The capital sent them back. The court suspected a curse hidden in the gift and refused to accept it. Something in Sutoku broke that day. The tales say he bit off his own tongue, and with the blood, he wrote a vow across his rejected scrolls. He would become the great demon of Japan. He would take the merit of all his prayers, all his devotion, and hurl every last measure of it into ruin. He would make the emperors into commoners, and the commoners into emperors. From that day he neither cut his hair nor his nails, and he lived like a thing already dead, waiting. He died in exile in 1164, still cursing, and the age of disasters began. Fires gutted the capital. Whirlwinds tore it, Emperors sickened, rebellions bloomed, and the proud Heikek land that had wronged him was hunted into the sea within a generation. The court knew exactly who was collecting the debt. Sutoku had risen as the greatest Tengu of Japan, an emperor of demons with golden kite's wings. The war chronicles even describe his court. In the pages of the Tiheiki, the great Tengu gather at night on the mountains above Kyoto. Around Sutoku sit the angriest ghosts of Japanese history, defeated emperors and broken warlords, all wearing wings now, all leaning together in the dark. They are planning the next fire, they are planning the next war. High above the sleeping capital, the losers of history hold their parliament, and the Tengu is no longer a bird demon in a tree. It is grievance itself, given talons. And yet, on one mountain north of the capital, in those very same years, a Tengu was doing something no one expected. It was teaching a child. Mount Kurama rises north of Kyoto, black with cedars, laced with cold streams. The people said the mountain had a king. Not a bird demon shrieking in the branches, but something older and stranger. A tall figure in the robes of a mountain ascetic, white-haired, long-nosed, with a fan of feathers in his hand. His name was Sajobo, and all the Tengu of the mountain answered to him. In those days a boy was sent to the temple on Kurama to become a monk. He was called Yushiwa Kamaru, and he was the last dangerous piece of a destroyed family. His father had died in rebellion against the ruling Heikek clan. His brothers were dead or scattered. The Heike let the child live only because a temple was thought to be a grave with prayers in it. He was meant to disappear. But at night, the boy slipped out of the temple and climbed into the dark of the cedar forest, and the king of the Tengu was waiting for him. Night after night, in the clearings of Kurama, Sajobo trained the boy. The old demon taught him the sword, and more than the sword. He taught him to move the way Tengu move, to leap from stone to stone as if the air were solid, to strike from angles no human teacher would imagine, to read an enemy's next thought in his shoulders. The boy grew fast and light and frighteningly precise, a swordsman shaped by something that was not human. That boy grew up to be Minamoto no Yoshitsune, and he became the deadliest general Japan had yet seen. When he fought, people remembered the mountain. He leapt between his own ships at Yashima like a thing with wings. At Dan no Yura he drove the Heike, his family's destroyers, into the sea until the water ran red. The clan that had murdered Yoshitsune's father was erased by a boy the Tengu had trained, as if the mountains themselves had chosen a champion and armed him. And Sajobo was not alone in his rank. By now the people spoke of great Tengu on every sacred peak in Japan, each with a name, each with a court of lesser wings. Tarobo ruled Mount Itago, watching over Kyoto from the west. Jirobo held the peaks of Hira above the Great Lake. Others reigned from Mount Akiba, from Mount Hiko in the far south, from the high snows across the islands. The mountains of Japan were a map of invisible kingdoms. Climb any holy peak in the old days, and you climbed through someone's realm. Which is why, when a person vanished near the mountains, everyone knew who to blame. There is an old phrase in Japan that carries a shiver with it, Tengu Kakushi, hidden by the Tengu. It was the name for a particular kind of vanishing. A child sent to gather firewood at the forest's edge does not come back. The village turns out with torches and bells, beating drums, shouting the child's name into the trees. Nothing. For 3 days, nothing. Then on the 4th morning the child is found sitting on the roof of the family house, or standing dazed at a crossroads 2 provinces away, unable to say where the days went. Some of the returned spoke of flying over pine forests. Some spoke of feasts in mountain palaces. Some never spoke again. For centuries, this was simply what could happen if the mountains were treated carelessly, and in the 1820s, one of Japan's most famous scholars decided to investigate it like a reporter. His name was Hirata Atsutane, and he had found a boy in Edo named Torakichi. The boy claimed he had not been stolen by the mountain spirits. He said he had lived among them. He described being carried away as a small child by an old mountain man, flown to the peaks, and raised in the other world for years at a time. Atsutane sat him down and questioned him relentlessly, session after session, and wrote it all into a book. The boy's answers were staggering in their detail. He described the food of the Tengu realm and how it was cooked. He described flying wrapped in his master's robe, the cold of the upper air, the look of provinces sliding past below. He described the medicines of the mountain folk, their writing, their tempers, their strange courtesy. Educated men came to the sessions to trap him in a lie, and left arguing with each other instead. Whatever Torakichi was, Japan's scholars took the Tengu seriously enough to interview a boy about their kitchens. But the villages did not only fear the Tengu, they also loved a story where the Tengu loses. Every child came to know the tale of the Tengu's magic cloak. A quick-witted boy finds a length of bamboo and holds it to his eye, gasping in wonder. He cries out that he can seek Yoto through it, the festivals, the great bridge, the whole world in one bamboo tube. In a tree above him, a Tengu leans down, burning with curiosity. The Tengu has a straw cloak that makes its wearer invisible, but what is invisibility next to a tube that shows the world? The trade is made in a heartbeat. The Tengu presses the bamboo to its eye and sees exactly nothing. The boy, wrapped in the cloak, is already gone. He spends a glorious invisible day drinking other people's sake and eating other people's dumplings. And the story ends with the cloak lost, the trick unraveling, and the boy plunging into the river while a furious Tengu searches the sky. Even the villagers who feared the mountain kings could laugh at them by the fire. That is its own kind of intimacy. The Tengu had entered the family, and its face was about to change one last time. Look at a Tengu mask today, in a shrine or a festival or hanging on a wall, and you will not see a bird. You will see a face the color of embers, furious and proud, with a nose as long as a hand. This is the Tengu the Edo period made. The wings remain folded at its back. The beak has become that impossible nose. And the demon now dresses as a Yamabushi, a mountain ascetic, in the small black cap and the pom-pommed sash of the wandering holy men. In one hand it carries a fan of feathers that can raise a storm with a single sweep. And somewhere in those centuries, the enemy of the law changed sides. The Tengu of the Edo age still punished monks, but now it punished the bad ones. It still humbled the proud, and the Japanese language remembers it to this day. Of a person swollen with arrogance, people still say he has become a Tengu, but the mountain kings were no longer invaders to be driven off. They had become the guardians of the peaks themselves. The Yamabushi who trained on the sacred mountains honored them as fellow masters of the heights. Villagers left offerings before mountain shrines with a long-nosed face carved above the door. Fear had matured into reverence. You did not fight the lord of the mountain. You bowed, walked carefully, and kept your voice down among the cedars. And if you doubt how real that reverence was, consider what happened in 1860. In that year, the shogun himself prepared to travel to the great shrine complex at Nikko, in the mountains north of Edo. The government arranged everything. Roads, lodgings, guards, protocol, and then officials climbed into the hills and posted formal written notices addressed to the Tengu. The message was courteous and entirely serious. The shogun would soon be visiting. The Tengu were respectfully requested to relocate to another mountain until the visit was concluded. Read that again. The military government of Japan, in the modern age of steamships and treaties, issued an official eviction notice to invisible beings. Not because anyone had seen a Tengu on the road, but because the mountains belonged to them, and everyone knew it, and it was only polite to ask. That is the full arc of the Tengu, told across 12 centuries. It fell out of the sky as an omen of war. It stalked the temples as a winged devourer of monks. It swallowed the rage of a betrayed emperor and became a court of demons plotting in the dark. It trained an orphan in the cedar forests and turned him into a legend. It stole children, lost its cloak to a clever boy, and ended as the honored guardian of every high place in Japan, so real that governments wrote it letters. Enemy, teacher, kidnapper, protector, the Tengu was never just one thing. It was the mountain itself, looking back at Japan with a human face. And in the high forests of Kurama and Atego, where the cedars swallow the light and stones sometimes fall from empty air, the old owners have never signed anything over. This is Myths from the Shadows, where every culture hides a secret waiting to be told. Subscribe and join the Myth Keepers, because some stories must never be forgotten.